As usual, the lawyer will have a lot more boring presentation than the law enforcement officers. So, Starlin asked me to speak really just to talk about Pottawattamie County when we were listed as a sanctuary county. This is very similar to a presentation that I gave about 6 months ago. I honestly wasn't even aware we'd ever been listed, and all of a sudden it popped up on a Fox News newscast that Pottawattamie County was listed as a sanctuary county. That caused some heartburn with various citizens that then contact government, and I started doing a research project. Just to give you a little bit of a background, prior to 2014, ICE had a policy that they would issue immigration detainers based solely on information that they had in their electronic databases. They just run, the jail list would go out to ICE, they'd talk back and forth, the name would pop up, they say, hey, they're on our list, you need to detain them, for immigration purposes. Not a shock, but the federal government's databases weren't always accurate, right? And so they would have actual U.S. citizens that were listed in the ICE database that were being held on immigration detainers. And as you can imagine, that's a problem, right? Due to errors in database, and I want to make sure I get this right, due to errors in the ICE database, the policy resulted in ICE wrongfully asking to detain at least 2,840 U.S. citizens between 2002 and 2016. Some reports have said it's as high as 20,000, but I think that's the lowest number that I could see. So regardless, several thousand U.S. citizens were wrongfully detained on the basis of ICE detainers. Several of these folks, we're in America. That you take somebody, hold them in jail when you shouldn't, and guess what? We file lawsuits, right? And so that's what happened. Several of these citizens filed lawsuits against not only ICE, but also against the local jurisdictions that were enforcing these, what turned out to be wrongful ICE orders. And so I'm aware that there was federal litigation in at least 9 states as a result of this, and I want to talk about a couple of those. In November of 2008, so you can see this is a multi-administration issue too. So back in November of 2008, we have President George W. Bush, right? So I mean, these are issues that have gone on through the Bush administration, through Obama, through Trump, through Biden, as we go forward. In 2008, in November, ICE issued an immigration detainer against Ernesto Galarza, who was in Allentown, Pennsylvania. Mr. Galarza, natural-born U.S. citizen. He was held in the Lehigh County Jail for 3 days without warrant or without an explanation. He was released when ICE agents interviewed him, figured out that he was a U.S. citizen. He filed a lawsuit for his unlawful detention, and it was settled against that county in Pennsylvania for $145,000 in June of 14. Several months after his case, in May of 2009, ICE issued a detainer for Ada Morales in Rhode Island. She was a naturalized U.S. citizen. She'd been born in Guatemala, but she's a U.S. citizen. She was released by the local jail after 24 hours. I haven't ever been in jail, hope never to be. Can't imagine 24 hours. Can't imagine 24 hours in jail would be great. Certainly not for no reason. But she was released after 24 hours once they confirmed her American citizenship. She filed a lawsuit against Rhode Island Corrections, who detained her without probable cause. After years of litigation, that case was settled for $35,000 plus a couple $100,000 in attorney fees. In 2012, ICE issued a detainer against Gerardo Gonzalez, another U.S. citizen in California. He did not file a lawsuit against the local jail, I guess lucky for them, but he did initiate a class action against ICE. And so as a result of all of this litigation, the ACLU sent out letters to, I'd say, most jails in the U.S. And they said, basically, we're letting you know ahead of time that if you are holding if you're holding U.S. citizens pursuant to immigration detainers in U.S. jails without probable cause, we will sue you. And I don't agree with the ACLU on a lot, but holding people in jail without probable cause, I think we can all agree is bad policy. Right? I'm certainly on the same page. And so as that happened, these these threatening letters come out, and unsurprisingly, who cares about big lawsuits against counties? They're insurance carriers, right? So the insurance carriers start to say, this is a problem. If we're going to be, getting sued, and they're seeing these settlements come down or verdicts come down, where counties and cities are getting held, liable for a couple $100,000 for just holding people pursuant to ICE detainers, the insurance companies start to get nervous, right? So back then, Sheriff Danker then issued a letter, as did many sheriffs around the country, that said that we would not hold individuals for immigration detainers without a judge's authorization. That's the same thing we do with anybody. If we arrest somebody, we have an arrest warrant, it's signed by a judge, right? That's why we get people, we hold them. We know we have probable cause. And so that went out to ICE in August of 2014. So in 3 months later, now we have President Obama in office. So in 3 months later, November of 2014, the Obama administration's ICE adopted a new policy, and it said that we will no longer issue immigration detainers based on what's in our database. We will have probable cause. But how will they determine probable cause? They said they're not going to have it reviewed by a judge. They'll just review it themselves and tell you that they have probable cause. So I sort of refer to that tongue-in-cheek as the "because I said so" policy. But they said, we'll tell you we have probable cause. That is not good enough. I don't care whether that was Bush, Obama, Trump, Biden. Because I said so is not a great policy, of holding people. And so, also at that time, ICE had a policy where they would ask people to be held, but then they wouldn't even send anyone out to investigate the case themselves. So we'd end up holding folks maybe, in jails for weeks, and then they'd be like, never mind, just release them, we're not going to, we're not even going to investigate the case. And so Pottawattamie County did not change our policy. We still require that there be a judge's signature with immigration detainers. Okay, federal court in Illinois in 2016, September 30th, ruled that the "because I said so" policy was unconstitutional, right? We don't hold people without probable cause without having a judge sign off on it. That's what the Constitution requires. And so that case had 30 days to appeal. The Obama administration chose not to appeal that decision, right? So the "because I said so" policy, being unconstitutional, became the law of the land by the end of October of 2016. So what happened about a week later? President Trump gets elected, right? So now we have a new administration coming in, and so really for a couple of months, there's not much happening because, the Obama administration is getting ready to go out, the Trump administration is getting ready to come in. President Trump takes office January 20th. Counties could hope that there's going to be a change in attitude with a change of administration, especially looking at the Moreno case. However, that did not happen. President Trump doubled down on the "because I said so" policy, at least initially, and he sent out a memo in February of 2017 that identified all cities and counties that were not complying with the "because I said so" policy. I call this the naughty list memo. It's not an official name, it's my name for it, right? But he put everybody on the naughty list. And there were a lot of cities and counties that ended up on the naughty list, Pottawattamie County being one of those. And so then after I think the administration got a little bit of a chance to sort of see what was going on, review the litigation, all of that, actually President Trump changed policy in March of 17. So just a month later, his ICE amended its policy and said, we will now require that all immigration detainers would be accompanied by a warrant signed by an actual judge. Within that period of time, what had been Pottawattamie County's policy, and honestly, many of these counties that were on the naughty list policy for years, was then officially in line with what federal government policy was. Unfortunately, while the policy was changed, the naughty list memo was not, right? So nobody ever issued an updated memo and saying, okay, by the way, we should not have had these many cities and counties listed as sanctuary counties. And so there's an organization called the Center for Immigration Studies, CIS, and they got a website, cis.org, and they just basically took the naughty list memo and put it on a map and showed all of the sanctuary cities and counties across the United States. And Pottawattamie County was on that list. And I wasn't even aware this was even a thing. I don't know that we ever even saw that list, but ultimately, several years later, Fox News runs a story and lists that sort of on their, what do they call it, Chiron, across the bottom, whatever that little crawler is going across, and the list, sanctuary counties, Pottawattamie County pops up, right? Which then causes, they said, heartburn among many different folks. Oh my Lord, can't believe that we are a sanctuary county. And so then I start having to field phone calls, the board starts fielding phone calls, Sheriff Brown started fielding phone calls, and so that's when I started this very boring research project that I'm now telling you about today. So all I want to say is Pottawattamie County is not and never has been a sanctuary county. Law enforcement from Pott County, from my office to the sheriff's office to the police department, we routinely cooperate with ICE. We hold many people in our jail for ICE detention. In fact, the Pottawattamie County Jail is actually ICE's regional detention facility. So we have at any given time 80 different ICE hold detainees that are in the Pottawattamie County Jail. That said, we follow the law and we follow the Constitution in Iowa or in Pottawattamie County. And we don't hold U.S. citizens without a judge signing a piece of paper that they've reviewed it, and we don't hold non-U.S. citizens in jail without a judge signing that piece of paper. I think that's the way the Constitution is, and I think that's the way the Constitution should be. We get arrest warrants ahead of time for people that we know have committed crimes, and if we don't get a warrant ahead of time because they committed a crime right in front of one of our officers, as soon as they're arrested, they're hauled in front of a judge, and the judge determines we have probable cause, and that's why we hold them. That's the same standard that we've been following for decades. So after all of this, and again, some of the heartburn that came up, I was asked to give a presentation at a similar type of event, I guess about 6 months ago. As a result of that, I ended up meeting with Advocate Brittany, with Congressman Veenstra and Senator Ernst's office, and I sort of presented them with the same information and said, what can we do to get off the naughty list? Right? We should never have been on this. I don't personally care. It doesn't change the way I do business. We're going to follow law regardless. But I understand that it irritates people to see, to pull up that website and see our name on the list. And so I reached out and said, is there anything that you can do to help? Because my sway with the federal government is zero. And so I'm very happy to say that they agreed to take a look at it. I did not even, again, I hadn't even followed up on it. I checked as Starlin asked if I would, present this same presentation to this group. I expected we're still on the naughty list. I found out, much to my happy surprise last week, we're off the naughty list. So, and it turns out I didn't see one city or county in Iowa on that list now. So I think, so that's, I think if we should be, if we deserve to be on the list, if a city wants to be on the list, they can be on the list. There are plenty of actual sanctuary cities and counties in the U.S. They have made a decision consciously that they do not want to support ICE and detainers, and that is perfectly fine. That is for them to deal with their electorate. But if you did not make that decision, you shouldn't be on the list. So that's my, again, sorry for that super boring, long-winded historical trip through federal litigation and the sanctuary list. So that's about. I've been across the border, but it was on a honeymoon. So I'm not many years ago. I cannot say that I have firsthand experience of what's going on down there now. I would echo what Sheriff Hansen and Senator Dawson said about the drug trafficking issues. That's where I really feel this affects us the most for my office, has been the influx of fentanyl. And that is a huge issue. I don't know if you're aware of this. To me, this is very sad, but the number one cause of death in America for people 45 and under is fentanyl overdose. We're losing 70,000 plus people per year to fentanyl overdoses. It is a horrible humanitarian crisis. It is very sad. And so anything we can do to stop the flow of fentanyl in, which, right now, it's basically pharmaceutical-grade fentanyl coming from China that gets shipped up through the cartels through Mexico, and it's a huge, huge issue. I've got a lot less expertise in that area than these law enforcement